Okay, so picture this. You're just starting your Friday, having our morning coffee, and then bam, you hear this news coming out of India about a high court judge. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of one of those legal thriller movies.
It's kind of crazy how one thing happening at a judge's house can turn the whole legal system upside down, right? You realize how much attention these judges get and how much everything's connected.
No kidding. So we're talking about Justice Yashwant Varma of the Delhi High Court. Reports are saying they found a huge amount of money, like 15 crore rupees at his place, and they're calling it unaccounted, which basically sets off all kinds of alarm bells.
15 crore rupees. Yeah, that's not pocket change. It's definitely not something you just like misplace or forget about. When you see that kind of money linked to a judge, it immediately makes you wonder where it came from and what it was going to be used for.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're going to break down what's happened so far, look at everyone's reactions, and try to figure out why this is causing such a stir. We really want to give you a clear picture of what's going on and maybe even uncover some of the stuff happening behind the scenes.
And it's important to remember that even though 15 crore is a crazy amount of money, this goes way beyond just the money itself. This is about the whole idea of whether people can trust the courts and whether our system is really fair. Those are pretty important things for a democracy to work right.
Totally. So let's get into the details. The news started with reports of this 15 crore in unaccounted cash being found at Justice Varma's official residence in Delhi. I mean, we all know 15 crore is not an everyday amount.
Yeah, you don't just stumble upon that kind of cash. The fact that it's connected to a high court judge, that's what makes this whole thing so shocking and raises a ton of questions.
For sure. And the response from the top of the judicial system was really fast. The Supreme Court Collegium, which is like the group led by the Chief Justice of India, right now that's Sanjeev Khanna, they handled judge appointments and transfers, and they took action right away. They decided to transfer Justice Varma back to his original court, the Allahabad High Court. And the thing that struck me was how quickly they did it. It wasn't like a slow process. It felt like they made the call almost as soon as they heard about the money.
Yeah, that speed is definitely something to pay attention to. It could mean they were really worried and wanted to deal with it right away. Transferring a judge like that, especially in this situation, sends a strong message, but exactly what that message is and how people are taking it, that's still up for debate.
Right, and that leads us to the reaction from the Allahabad High Court Bar Association. Now things get even more interesting and a lot more complicated. So the Bar Association represents the lawyers who work at the Allahabad High Court, and their response to Justice Varma coming back, well, let's just say they weren't exactly thrilled. They put out a statement, a very strong public statement.
Yeah, they didn't hold back. It was clear they felt like they were being treated unfairly. Their statement, especially what their president Anil Tiwari said, shows how frustrated they are. They're asking if the Allahabad High Court is just a dumping ground or a trash bin for judges who get into trouble somewhere else. I mean, it's pretty harsh.
It is. You can practically hear the anger in their words. It's like they feel insulted, as if the Supreme Court just tossed a problem their way without thinking about the challenges they're already dealing with. This kind of points to a bigger issue about how different high courts are seen and treated within the whole system.
It makes you wonder why the collegium made this decision and what they thought would happen. They might have just wanted to solve the problem quickly, but the lawyers in Allahabad feel like they're being punished or ignored.
It helped to know a bit about Justice Varma's career to understand why this transfer and the reaction are so huge. This isn't some rookie judge. He was born in Allahabad back in 1969, so he's 56 now. He got his BCom from Hansraj College in Delhi and then his LLB from Rewa University in Madhya Pradesh. He started working as a lawyer at the Allahabad High Court in 1992. He built a really good reputation focusing on constitutional law and taxes.
He worked his way up in the legal world, starting as a lawyer, then becoming special counsel for the court in 2006 and chief standing counsel for the Uttar Pradesh government from 2012 to 2013. That shows that people in the legal field and the government trusted him a lot. Becoming a senior advocate in 2013 just solidified his place.
Totally. He became an additional judge at the Allahabad High Court in October 2014 and a permanent judge there in February 2016. So he was at the Allahabad High Court for a while before moving to the Delhi High Court. Knowing his career makes this whole thing even more surprising.
Right, he had a long and successful career, and now suddenly he's in the middle of this controversy. It makes you wonder what happened and how this unaccounted money ended up being connected to him.
And that's the big question. 15 crore rupees in unaccounted money. Remember, this is what's been reported so far. The Supreme Court is doing what they call a preliminary inquiry. They've asked the Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court for a report so they can get a better idea of what's going on. It's like the first step in trying to figure out the truth. And you know what's interesting? Justice Varma wasn't in court on Friday, March 21st, 2025, the same day this news broke out.
That's pretty standard in these situations. They're trying to follow the rules and be fair. That report from the Delhi High Court is going to be super important. It'll probably decide what the Supreme Court does next. And yet, Justice Varma not being in court that day adds to the story, but we don't know why he was absent. It could be unrelated.
Now let's go back to the Allahabad High Court. They're not just upset about Justice Varma coming back, they're also dealing with some serious problems that have been going on for a while. They're saying they don't have enough judges, which is a problem a lot of high courts in India face. They say it's causing a huge backlog of cases. New cases are waiting months to be heard. The Bar Association is worried that this is making people lose faith in the justice system.
Yeah, their worries make sense. If there aren't enough judges, things slow down and people start to question if the system even works. When cases take forever to be resolved, it defeats the whole purpose of having courts in the first place. They're already overwhelmed, so asking them to take on another judge in this situation is understandable why they're upset.
Exactly. They feel like taking on Justice Varma on top of everything else is unfair and could make things even worse for them. They're basically saying, we're already drowning and now you're throwing another weight on us.
That's a good way to put it. It's like they feel like instead of getting help with their problems, they're being given even more to deal with. And it's taking away from their main goal, which is to clear the backlog and make sure people get justice quickly.
This whole situation brings up some bigger questions, too, especially about how much people trust the courts. When something like this happens with a judge, it can definitely shake people's confidence. The Allahabad High Court Bar Association made a big statement against corruption, and that reflects how a lot of people feel. They want to believe that our institutions are honest.
They're absolutely right to stand up against corruption. It's a core part of being a lawyer. When there are hints of wrongdoing in the courts, it's really damaging. These situations have to be handled openly and effectively.
And did you know that the Bar Association mentioned that the Supreme Court has criticized the Allahabad High Court before? This adds a whole other layer to the relationship between these two important courts and might explain why the Bar Association is so defensive. It's like there's some tension from the past that this whole thing has made worse.
Yeah, knowing that there's been criticism in the past helps explain how they're feeling and like they feel picked on or judged, which makes them more sensitive to anything that seems negative.
And then there's this sarcastic comment in their statement where they say it's like the Supreme Court expects Allahabad to fix judges who have problems. That's a pretty telling statement. It makes you think that they don't believe this transfer is a real solution. It's more like the Supreme Court trying to sweep a problem under the rug without dealing with the root cause.
Yeah, the sarcasm shows how skeptical they are. They're basically saying that they don't think just moving a judge from one place to another is going to solve anything, especially if there are bigger concerns about his behavior.
So where do things stand right now? Well, it looks like Justice Varma is going to go back to Allahabad, but I doubt they'll be rolling out the red carpet for him. And the Supreme Court's investigation into the money is still going on. It's still early, and we don't have all the facts yet.
I'm sure everyone's going to be watching closely to see what happens when Justice Varma goes back to Allahabad. That investigation is going to be key to figuring out what really happened with that money and what the next steps should be.
So to sum up, we've got reports of a huge amount of unaccounted money found at Justice Varma's house. The Supreme Court's quick decision to transfer him back to Allahabad and the Allahabad High Court Bar Association pushing back hard because they feel like they're being given a raw deal. It's a real clash between what the Supreme Court wants to do and what the people at the Allahabad High Court think is fair.
Yeah, it shows you how tricky things can get in a big system like the judiciary. You've got the Supreme Court trying to make sure things are run properly, and then you've got individual high courts dealing with their own issues like workload resources and public image. It's a tough balancing act.
This whole thing makes you think about some important questions, like how do we hold judges accountable? How much do people trust the courts? And what do we do in situations like this to make sure justice is served?
It makes you look beyond just the headlines and think about how complicated our legal system really is. How do we handle these sensitive situations so that everyone is treated fairly? What does this mean for the relationship between the different levels of courts?
Those are some great points to think about. This whole thing reminds us that even though the law is about rules and principles, it's still run by people, and people are complicated. We're going to keep following this story as it develops.